there's 45% recognised reduction in crime, as a result of people coming to Christ. Because it should happen, shouldn't it? It shouldn't just be filling churches, this gospel. It should be transforming communities.
Right, welcome everybody. This is Simon Gilbo with Inspired, and this week I'm really excited to have Andy Hawthorne with us. I'm not into hero worship, but I am into having healthy heroes, and Andy would be one of my heroes. He's someone that I've had the chance to hook up in ministry terms a number of times, and I absolutely love what they're doing. And it's not just me that loves what he's doing, because, for example, he's been awarded an OB from the Queen for his work, and for 2 years running he was voted Sunday Times CEO of the Year, which means that, well, that's just great, isn't it? That's secular recognition of a job well done. So welcome, Andy.
So, guaranteed to be a disappointment after that introduction, Simon, but it's a joy to be on here with you. Hi, mate.
It's great to have you. Well, listen, let's get straight into it. So give us a bit of your background and how you came to faith.
Yeah, so there's a great Christian heritage in my family. My great-grandfather was the first Salvation Army missionary to India. A bunch of guys got 3 months on a boat and went out there and served the poor and the lost. And yet, by the time he got to 3 generations on, my mum and dad had pretty much lost it. And yet they were radically converted through a move of God in Hambleton Road. An old lady led half the women on the streets of the Lord through her young wives' Bible studies. And then my dad and most of the men came in too shortly afterwards. So from that point, and me being about 3 or 4 at this stage, can't really remember it too much, but I was always made to go to church, and yet didn't enjoy it too much, and actually rebelled as a teenager. I made a commitment as a young man, but rebelled as a teenager and got into all sorts of trouble. And then when I was 17, my mum and a bunch of these young wives were praying for me and for my brother Simon. And every year my mum would buy us a Christian book. And when I was 17 and Simon was 19, he was completely off the rails. He was on drugs, in trouble with the police. And he started going out with a girl called Leslie. And Leslie, Simon's girlfriend, went over to Blackpool to visit a cousin of hers. And she wandered into a second-hand bookshop, and just a regular secular bookshop. And on the side, this cousin of hers saw a book by an evangelist called Arthur Blessed. Mm-hmm. Probably heard of him, haven't you, yeah. Simon? So Arthur Blessed had written this book, and he'd been doing a mission in Blackpool. And this girl said to my brother's girlfriend, can I buy that for you? See what you think of this bloke who's been in our school. And so she bought this book called Turned On to Jesus for Simon's girlfriend. And Leslie read it and was so impressed with it that she gave it to her boyfriend, my brother. Simon opened the book, and believe it or not, it said, "To Simon, with love from Mum, Christmas 1974. And this was a book that my mum had bought for Leslie 5 years previous.
Wow.
And it got into a boyfriend's hands. And we don't know actually to this day how it got off the bookshelf in South Manchester, 50 miles away into Blackpool.
Incredible. Into
his girlfriend's hands and back around to him. But you know what? Women were praying. Hound of Heaven was on the move. And when Simon opened this book, it was like, wow, that is To Simon with Love from God. And so he read it. And as a result of reading that book, driving down the road in his van, he gave his life to Christ and was radically converted, gave up all the nonsense and phoned me up and said, "Andy, it's true. You need to come to church with me. I'm going to start going to church again. I've given my life to Jesus." And following Sunday, I went to church with Simon, to be honest, for the first time in 5 or 6 years. And I wasn't that impressed with it, but I felt like I wanted to go back the following week. And for about the next 6 months, I was partying and larging it up in Manchester, and Simon was devoted to Christ. And then after 6 months, he gave his testimony, told the story about the book my mum had bought him and how excited he was with Jesus. And that night, if there'd been an evangelist preaching at that church, I would have gone down the front because I just knew the Lord was speaking to me. But I went home, knelt by my bedside, and fully gave my life to Christ, age 17. And looking back, that's 44 years ago nearly. I really believe God not only just fully saved me, set me on fire, but gave me the gift of an evangelist, because next thing I wanted to do was tell all my mates about Jesus, and started leading people to Christ, and came up with all sorts of funny evangelistic campaigns. Mm-hmm. I remember me and Simon were involved in printing some beer mats that said on one side, come to your local, and on the other side, church. And we did all these funny ideas. And but I had this incredible passion. And in that season, we were going to a church, an Anglican church, quite a conservative church called St. Mary's Cheadle. But there was this move of God, and the youth group grew from about 12 to 200 in a very short space of time. People were getting saved every week, and all kinds of missionaries and ministry leaders and business people who have plowed money into God's work. God just did something. And so I was born into that, and I thought it was always going to be like that. But so the first couple of years, I was just riding this wave of blessing and excitement in God. And shortly after that, myself and Simon then, well, actually what happened was I tried to go into ministry, even looked at Anglican ministry, which would have been an absolute disaster, I think. But I looked at all sorts of options, but nobody seemed to want to have me. And so I went into business with my brother, and we set up a fashion accessory business, selling to the big chain stores in London. And I guess because I'm a salesman, it went well, and we made decent amount of money. And fast forward now to the mid 1980s, when I'm about 25 and Simon's about 28, Lady Diana wore a pair of our braces. We used to make fashion braces for ladies, and they became the big hit in the UK. And we had orders overnight for millions of pairs of these braces, and not enough people to make them. So we borrowed money off the bank, bought loads of brace machinery, and employed loads of local scallywags. Our factory was in inner city Manchester, not for really any better reason than that's where we got the best grants. And we manufactured all these braces with the local tearaways. The job centre discovered here's a business that was so desperate they'd employ anybody. And so we had all these lads joined us, mainly lads, a few girls as well. Dozens of them we employed. And there was violence and vandalism, and then the break-in started, and the factory got covered in graffiti, and it was carnage. But myself and Simon, both committed Christians, we used to have prayer meetings with the lads and girls every day, and they looked like, what's going on here? But it was their messy lives actually that prompted us in 1987 to come up with an idea to organise Manchester's biggest ever youth mission. Said, let's just go for it. We've got some resources in this business. Down the road from our factory was the biggest rock venue in Manchester called the Apollo Theatre then. Let's book the Apollo for a week. Let's try and get churches to do loads of missions in the inner city to just the kind of kids we're employing. And it was all crazy, naive stuff, but wow, God blessed it. And me and my brother didn't even know what we were doing really. Actually organised Manchester's biggest ever youth mission up to that point. We had the Apollo pack for 7 nights, and we had 300 build-up events, and it was just crazy. God seeing our heart, and in Manchester, in many ways, and I'm not taking the credit for this, it was the Lord, but was known as a real sort of backwater of Christianity. Not much going on.
Mm-hmm.
Church leaders were quite divided. If there was ever a tour, Christian tour, it was always Manchester had the smallest attendance, etc., and tough northern city. But God started to move, and churches started to work together, and shortly after that we called it the Message 88, the Apollo Theatre. Shortly after that, me and a mate formed this band that we called the Worldwide Message Tribe, and I was still in the business, and we set up a thing called the Message to Schools. It was all called the Message, and I was just going in spare time out of the business into local inner city schools, and we started to do rap music. And this is at the end of the 80s. Manchester was like a bit of a centre of world music. There was all these cool rave bands coming out of Manchester. Mm-hmm. So we did this trippy rave music, and it just caught on with the school kids, caught on with lots and lots of people. We never planned it, but got a deal with Warner Brothers and started selling music all over the world, and saw hundreds of thousands of albums, and got invited to do all these big gigs and award ceremonies in the States and all this mad stuff. And we just wanted to be schools workers in Manchester. And we'd said, I remember me and Mark just had said when we formed the band, which is just me and him basically, doing some rap music to the platform for the gospel, we said, if we ever make anything out of this band, it's going to be ploughed back into kingdom work, and we're never gonna, if we ever got any sort of a record deal. We're never going to keep the money. We're just going to give it all away. And I just think, I don't know. And we're not going to take big gigs. We're going to just focus on, as the focus, the priority. We're going to focus on schools. First thing is book 35 schools weeks a year in Manchester. And then if we can get any more. So initially I was doing that. I was just getting away from the business part-time, and then I just loved it so much that Simon carried on with the business and funded what Message to Schools as a charity. Me and Mark Pennells, is called, a mate of mine. And again, there's a verse that I love, Simon, that you probably know, that says, "The eyes of the Lord range the earth, looking for a heart fully committed to me."
Fully committed, that's right.
Yeah, that man or that woman, of course, I'll strongly support. And definitely with the Worldwide Message Tribe, God just strongly supported us. I really couldn't sing, dance, or rap. I just did this funny kind of rapping, like a demonized member of Sesame Street. Genuinely, I would go into schools and go, "Jump into the house of God," and everyone would go, "That's amazing." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's awful." And genuinely, we signed all these mad record deals and sold hundreds of thousands of albums. And it was the Lord. It just seeing a heart and wanting to give us a platform. And of course, the Lord knows the end from the beginning, knows what was going to happen beyond that. And so, we left the business and set up this charity with Mark, with two of us.
Brilliant.
And downscaled my lifestyle. And from now on in, it's all about reaching young people for Jesus.
So I remember back in the late 80s, I mean, I was a teenager, hearing about the Worldwide Message Tribe and the Message and not really knowing what the difference was.
Right. So the Message basically is the charity, the umbrella and the Worldwide Message Tribe was one of the ministries. Initially, it was all we had. All we had was me and Mark Pennells and some volunteer dancers from our youth group going into schools doing evangelism. But we set up a charity. Initially, it was called the Message to Schools Trust.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the umbrella, the Message. The Worldwide Message Tribe was one of the bands.
Right.
So now we've got, lots of bands and lots of other stuff we do.
And I'm sure you've got loads of stories of, massive, superb life transformation. Give us a few of those.
Well, the lovely thing about the Message is every week we have stories of life transformation. My favorite story from this last week is a girl called Nikita, who we started to do these things I'd love to tell you about before the end of this little chat, called community groceries. As a kind of response to the pandemic. We've set up groceries. We've got 8 of them so far. We've got a vision to have 40 by the end of next year. And they're full on shops, like a supermarket, where members of the community who are really struggling can come for £3, do a full shop. We've also got Alpha running alongside it, and Christians Against Poverty courses, and IT training and healthy cooking classes. It's just amazing. Thousands of families have now become members. We only started this 6 months ago. But my favorite story from the last week is a girl called Nikita, who is a traveler, part of the traveling community, and she was kicked out. It often happens, and at that point they can often be completely no connections. They just disassociate themselves, and she couldn't read and write, this girl, and she came to the community grocery with her baby in the most knackered trolley you've ever seen. And Danielle, who works with me here at the Message, said to her, "Oh, can we help get you a new trolley?" And she said, "Yeah, I had to get this one off the tip because I've got no money and I haven't been able to sign up for benefits because I can't read and write." So, but the council had given her a house, and we went to see a house. I didn't go, Danielle went, and it was a complete wreck, her house. So we helped do up her house and got her a new trolley and came alongside her, helped to get her benefits sorted, and with all kinds of challenges and debt she was in. But anyway, that was about a month ago. And so she then joined the community grocery here in Manchester, and we helped with lots of stuff. And anyway, last week she gave her life to Christ, which we were thrilled with. And she said 2 days later, she said, "You know what? A month ago, I was really thinking, I just need to start taking drugs. I just need something to fill this awful void, this horrible hole. I just need to take drugs." And But now I've got this joy inside, and that hole's been filled, and I don't need to do that because I've got Jesus. And that story to me is the
Mm,
difference between, because Satan is so sneaky. He's always got a plan to steal, kill, and destroy.
yeah.
Somebody who's absolutely at the end of themselves and is desperate and in debt and has been, kicked out by the family. Satan would love to come in then. Let's get him addicted to drugs. Let's get him on the next step downhill. Let's get him addicted. Let's get him in prison. Let's get him away from the kids. Satan's always got a plan to steal, kill, and destroy. But
Mm,
Jesus has got a plan. It's called life and life to the full, isn't it? He
yeah.
wants the best. And Jesus has intersected Satan's plan for Nikita. And now it's onwards and upwards. And the church has come alongside. She's set free and set on fire. That basically is the message bottled, what's happened in that young woman's life this week. So, and we're excited for the future for her. Yeah.
Wonderful. And over the years, have you had your stereotypical Nicky Cruz type conversions, drug dealers ending up in ministry, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, one of our best evangelists is a lad called Nick. And Nick, for some reason, Nick really took a shine to me, and I got to know the guy. And he would always, if I ever invited him, as long as I picked him up, he would always come and hear me preach. And so for about 5 years, I would probably once a month pick Nick up, take him to hear me preach, do long extended appeals while lots of other people came to Christ. And Nick would never respond. He'd always sit on the back row.
Mm-hmm.
But he would always, and I spent a long time with this guy. And it's like almost like the more he heard me preach, the worse his life got. He got into drug dealing and 3 suicide attempts and all sorts of chaos and violence. And then, annoyingly, Nick went to hear a Nigerian evangelist preach in Manchester and gave his life to Jesus. And he came to see me the next day at the message. And I'm like, "Hi, mate, you look different." "Oh, yeah, I've finally done it, Andy. I gave my life to Christ last night." And he said, "I need to work for the message." I said, "Well, mate, obviously you're probably not ready. We can help you, but I know I need to work for the message." He said, "I'll do anything. I don't need to be paid. I'll clean the toilets. I just need to be around you guys now." So I took a flyer and put this guy who was still living with his girlfriend and still doing a bit of weed on the side, but had obviously been radically changed, put him on our academy program, which is all these shiny, spirit-filled young adults.
Yeah.
And Nick was on the academy program. And during that year, he dealt with all sorts of demons and properly got set on fire. And he's now, that's like 10 years ago, he's now one of our very best evangelists, who's an amazing role model in prison and leading people to Jesus left, right, and center, and became an incredible rapper, and has just won an award, a secular award in the States for the best new song, which is a full-on song about his testimony, and he's just amazing. So that's Nick is like one of my proper trophies, and we've got lots of them, but they're the stories, because the beautiful thing about something like that. So now Nick has married the girl he was living with, and she's on fire for Jesus and leading a ministry, and I was best man at their wedding, and they're now bringing up the kids in the Lord, and multiple repercussions in their family, and actually in all sorts of gangs across Manchester, because they're connecting with him through his rap music, and it's just precious, the ripples of one person who truly gets saved. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
That's why why would you want to be a prime minister if you could be an evangelist, I reckon.
Amen. Yeah. And am I right that at certain stages, the police would recognize your impact in terms of crime rates decreasing, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had some belting. I remember we did a big mission in Manchester called Message 2000, and so which we had the Manchester Arena, which had then become the biggest. It wasn't built when we first started, but that had become the biggest venue in Manchester. And we had 12,000 screaming kids there. But this police officer who wasn't a Christian, Bob Collier at that point, he now is a full-on Christian, but he stood up in the arena and he said, "Can I just say to you guys, how do you get crime to completely stop in an estate for 2 weeks while you've been here for this mission? How do you get crime to completely stop for 2 weeks in Manchester's worst crime area when there would normally be dozens of call-outs a night? How do you get that to stop?" And they all went, "Hey!" And he said, "Send you lot in." and we'd been praying and witnessing and doing up all the gardens, and crime had completely stopped. And on the back of that, there's 45% recognised reduction in crime, as a result of people coming to Christ. Because it should happen, shouldn't it? It shouldn't just be filling churches, this gospel. It should be transforming communities. So, yeah, and our strategy of going after the hardest to reach is how that happens, really.
Wonderful. So did that tie in? I mean, when you get secular recognition, what was your OBE for?
Yeah, it was for services to young people in Manchester. Yeah, that was a completely unexpected thing, and you got to be careful with those things as well. Some people say it stands for old big head because you can be that way, can't you? If you're not careful, because it's obviously we've got 700 Eden workers. People who've moved into these deprived communities, and all these people who are sacrificing more than me, and I get the recognition. But I liked it that. It was for services to young people in Manchester. And I remember actually going to Buckingham Palace and queuing up there with all Tim Brooke Taylor was there, and Jessica Ennis, and also lots of brilliant people who've done great work in the community. But the guy came out in all his fancy regalia and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the person who will be giving out the awards today is His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales." And there was an audible,
oh, shame.
it must be awful being Prince Charles on occasions like that, because everyone's like, we really wanted the Queen.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, because I got a lesser award. I got an MBE, and likewise. The Queen was upstairs, but I think she had been doing 45 functions that week.
Of course, she had.
Yeah, you can have a day off, love.
Yeah, but anyway, Prince Charles was lovely actually, and I've been to Prince Charles' house and showed him videos about the message and the work we're doing, and he's been very warm and gracious. But on occasion like that, you really would like the Queen, wouldn't you? So anyway, yeah. But I'm not complaining.
Folks, I'd love it if you're enjoying these podcasts and getting inspired. That's the whole purpose of it. If you could spread the word, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. And if you want to be in touch with me, you can do so on simongilbo.com or any of the social media platforms. All right, let's get back to the podcast. And the Sunday Times Awards?
Yeah, that was a bit mad, really. Sunday Times do a Best Companies Awards. I wasn't like CEO, I was Charity CEO of the Year.
All right.
But it was against all the massive charities, massive secular charities, and we got the chance to stand up in front of them all and witness for Christ, which is quite something. The day of the last, so it's a big swanky charity awards ceremony in London, and there's a top 100 charities, and also like Royal Institute for the Blind and all National Trust, some really the biggest charities in the UK, and this scruffy Manchester Christian charity. But it was the day Billy Graham died, the last one, because that's how I remember it. And it was the day my wife found a secondary cancer. Mm-hmm. And it was the day my right-hand man, who I'd been invested in for 2 years, suddenly left the charity, and it was the day in the morning I was invited to this high school to present awards. There's like an awards ceremony at an Anglican Church of England high school. And that was how the day started before I got on the train to London for this awards ceremony. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know what it was. And I walked in this school reception in North Manchester. And in the reception, there were pictures of Bono, the rock star, mm-hmm. Kaka, the footballer, Andrew White, the vicar of Baghdad, and me. And I'm like, why is my picture up in your reception? They said, we've been studying your life and the life of the message in RE, and there's 500 schools that have been doing this program, and they've all been encouraged to do good work in their community on the back of it. So we've set up a prayer garden in the town. We've written to persecuted Christians. We've done all this social action in the town. And I didn't know any of this. I was literally like, what? And I was so encouraged, so excited that would even happen, that God would allow that. And I ended up praying with all these kids. They had a communion service in this regular Church of England school. And it was amazing. And then I got on the train. My wife found a secondary cancer, which has been, ongoing for the last 3 years, and God's helping us through that. And then in the evening, Well, my right-hand man handed in his notice in tears. It was just like, what? And in the evening, we swept the board. It wasn't just I won Chief Executive of the Year. The Message Trust won Charity of the Year.
Wow.
So we were the number one charity. And it was just this, I mean, talk about roller coaster of emotions and God, what are you up to? And it was like a month of prayer and fasting at the Message.
Yeah.
And we'd given ourselves to this month where going through John, studying a chapter in John every day, fasting and praying, and God did a massive shake up, but also showed us what he could do. So yeah, crazy season.
So prayer, fasting, that would be at the absolute bedrock of your philosophy, would it?
Yeah. My kind of little strapline that I always say to people is I don't even have a job description, probably should have, but I started it. But if I did have, I say it would have 2 lines on it. Keep prayer hot, keep mission hot. My job is twofold as leader, founder of the Message. Make sure, test the prayer temperature. So every day we meet to pray. We have seasons of prayer and fasting. We have whole days given over. I mean, you've come to one of our days, haven't you? I think, Simon.
Yeah, a few times, actually.
Where we just give the whole day, and I crack the whip. Everybody's got to come in. Started with, I think we started in a couple of years in when we had about 4 or 5 of us meeting in this little side room at this church. Now it'll be 3, pre-COVID times, it'll be 300 of us piled in from all over the country, and a big video screen and great band up the front and all power pack testimonies. But yeah, that has really kept us going. I'm convinced that prayer, commitment to prayer, I'm not making out I'm a great man of prayer. I'm not. I wish I was better at it, but I know that unless we keep prayer hot, we're never going to see the things we want God to do in this season. So prayer is absolutely foundational, and I test the prayer temperature and constantly have people on team. Their job is to mobilize prayer within the Message, and we're constantly trying to raise prayer warriors for the Message. So yeah,
and I love it. The church is so on the back foot in this country. I remember seeing you. I think you're addressing the Scottish Parliament, just standing up there, and whether it's there just preaching the gospel or through your work, you're not toning down the message to access secular funding, are you?
Yeah, no. And I have literally said to my trustees, will you if I ever take any money off anybody where we can't proclaim Christ, please sack me and get someone else in, because it's always the temptation as your charity grows, and we are now multi-million-pound charity, always the temptation to go after those government pots, try and do good works. But if you carefully remove the gospel, we just lose our authority, and there's only Jesus can change the human heart. And only that's why it is a real investment in true gospel ministry, like what you're doing, Simon, and what you've done in Burundi. It's the only stuff that really is going to change nations.
Yeah,
is one human heart at a time changed, and Jesus can change the hardest heart. We know that, don't we?
It's so encouraging. I mean, I kicked off this podcast series with my mate Ed Walker, who you also know, Hope into Action, and it's lovely when people are refuse to compromise their sort of DNA, their spiritual DNA, and they're out with it, and sort of despite that, secular authorities, he was getting the Guardian Charity Homelessness Project of the Year, you guys getting recognised. I mean, we're not into those sort of awards, are we? Because we got the audience, the one we're trying to please. But it's lovely when, a sort of a crowd that you'd expect to be against you are actually recognising that you cannot deny the results. That policeman standing up saying, how on earth do you stop crying for 2 weeks? Nothing else can happen.
Yeah, and then the guy becomes a Christian. That's the lovely thing.
Yeah,
because he sees the power of it. Hardened copper who's worked in these very deprived estate. You can't deny.
Yeah,
there's only some things only God can do. So yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned earlier those 700. Well, currently 700 Eden workers. Tell us about the whole Eden concept.
Well, so we're going back quite a few years now, but with the Worldwide Message Tribe, we tried very hard to do missions, week-long schools missions in the hardest communities. And so in 1997, the most deprived neighbourhood in Britain out of 40,000 wards was called Bench Hill in Wythenshawe.
Hmm.
And it was, it was like the Wild West, like drug dealers and prostitutes hanging on the corners and drive-by shootings and stuff. It was like literally the worst place to live. And there were 2 high schools, and we did a week in each, and booked the big venue, the Forum Centre in Wythenshawe, and we did a gig, and 700 kids came along, and I preached, and 100 gave their life to Christ. And what was we used to have like a response room, and it was really, really powerful in the response room. Real sense of the roughest, toughest kids in Manchester, in the roughest, toughest ward in Britain, were giving their life to Jesus and really meaning it. And what would happen at the end of the Worldwide Message Tribe gigs? We'd do all this crazy rap music, and then we'd have a ballad at the end called The Cross, and we'd have all images of the cross on the screen, and it would either at that point kick off, and the change in atmosphere, there'd be a mass fight, or everybody would move in on the girl they'd been waiting to play tonsil tennis with, or and they're like, this is the ballad at the end of the night, and I'm like, stop it, I'm trying to preach the cross here. Or there would be this amazing sense of God's presence, which often happened, and that happened in the worst ward in Britain. And those 100 kids not only made a commitment that night, but they all turned up for church on Sunday. And we were working with a church of about 25 people, and all these crazy kids came in who'd had some kind of encounter with Christ 2 days before. And our kind of foundational scripture I told you about, booking the Apollo Theatre, slightly arrogantly and naively in 1987, and I, when I got home and we'd had the idea, I said, oh Lord, if it really is you, would you speak to me through the Bible? And that night my set reading was Isaiah 43. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. There'll be rivers in the desert. Do you not perceive it? There'll be rivers in the desert, streams in the wasteland. The wild animals will honor me. Those I've formed to declare my praise. And I haven't left those verses, I don't think, in over 30 years. And that was like perfect picture of what happened that night in Bench Hill. Like these kids who, it would be a fair description, many of them wild animals, they'd started to honor the Lord. And there was a river flowing in a very dry place. But we knew that a church of, 25 people could never disciple 100 kids with so many issues. And so Mike Pilavaici invited us actually to just do a missionary call for Bench Hill at Soul Survivor that summer with the band. And we went round Soul Survivors, and we ended up with over 300 people volunteering to move into Bench Hill.
Wow.
Because we said it's the missionary call. Move from the nice places to the tough places, following Christ. We did exactly that. And we scaled that 300 and odd down to the crack 25 young adults mainly, who moved in to just disciple those kids and try and see transformation come. And it was a precious, precious thing. The first time I ever spoke publicly about Eden, I gathered a bunch of leaders in Manchester, in the centre of Manchester, and I told them what we were trying to do, and I said, would you pray for us? Would you please give us some money, because we want to employ full-time staff? Would you encourage some of your peoples to be volunteer workers who move into this tough place? Everyone knew what Bench Hill was like. And sure enough, they said they would. And I left that meeting with my brother, quite excited. And I went outside the church and where the meeting was, a big car park, sat in my car with Simon talking about it. And a guy came and knocked on the car window. And I wound the window down. And he said, oh, excuse me, lads, I don't know if you're Christians, if you understand this kind of thing, but I've been sat there eating my sandwiches, reading my Bible, and I feel compelled to read you these scriptures. And Simon said, wow, you better get in the back, mate. And he didn't know we're Christians, didn't know 5 minutes before we'd come out of this meeting where we talked about Eden for the first time. And he said, I think these verses might be for you. And it was Psalm 37, verses 5 to 11, where it says, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he'll do this. The righteousness of your cause will shine like the noonday sun. Be patient and wait on the Lord, because the meek will inherit the land and enjoy great peace.
Yes.
Basically, just epic scriptures for Eden.
Yeah.
The righteousness of the cause. Christians moving in to live in those tough neighborhoods, that's God's cause. And he promised we're going to see a land inherited for Jesus that day. So in the back of that, we launched Eden Bench Hill and then started to roll more out. And, 50 odd Eden teams later, we've had over 700 people move in, and we're negotiating on another 30 plus Eden teams right now to see hundreds more people make that kind of anonymous. I guess Worldwide Message Tribe and the big festivals, the big gigs we do is more like lamp on a stand, city on a hill, but the real heroes are the salt and yeast people, the people just go in and serve and love in these really deprived communities and in the prisons. So yeah, Eden's just been an amazing thing.
Wonderful. Have all these Eden teams been total successes?
Oh, no, you won't be surprised to know. We've had some utter nightmares over the years. And even in the early days, I mean, we would regularly go home with black eyes and the absolute chaos. We'd gather all these kids and you just duck and dive. And I guess, I mentioned Salvation Army early days, my great-grandfather, and those early days is absolutely our inspiration. We haven't seen anything like the Salvation Army, so it was just a move of God amongst the poor. But I've realized that, like without really trying and planning it, we've been reinventing what they were doing. The brass bands were the music of the dance hall and the nightclub you'd never have in church, and the jobs they provided, and the prison gate ministry, and the feeding the poor, and just so much of what they did, but just the next level globally is what we've been trying to do for the last few years. But they also had to embrace suffering. That was a actual value. Get used to it. There's going to be opposition. And in the early days of Eden, we had loads of opposition from churches and bishops and various people just because we were partnering with the wrong people, and that's really hard. And so, yeah, it's not been, one glory story to the next, but I do actually look back in awe and can see that God's definitely done more than I could have asked or imagined when two scruffy guys formed a band called the Worldwide Message Tribe. Yeah.
And looking forward, what gets you excited now?
Well, there's a bunch of things. I feel like I was talking to one of our trustees this morning, and during COVID, I genuinely feel like God's done 20 years work in 12 months.
Really?
I feel like that's happening in the church. There's a bit of a reformation going, if we can embrace this. And God's looking for faith. Some people are in despair and defeat and discouragement and shutting the churches up. But those of us who are lifting our eyes and looking at the harvest, God is doing something amazing. Nicky Gumbel said to me a couple of weeks ago, this is literally the greatest evangelistic opportunity of our lifetime. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see 40 of these groceries that are much more than groceries. The mission hubs where we'll have 50,000 members, and I believe tens of thousands of the poorest members of society coming to Christ in the next 18 months. And, if anybody wants to talk to the message, if you've got a heart to feed the poor and preach the gospel, we'd love to talk to you. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about organising something called Festival Manchester in the summer of 22. I mean, some people may think we're bonkers thinking about gathering 100,000 people in a massive park in 2022, but we really believe it's the Lord. And we're planning the biggest outreach Manchester's ever seen, which isn't just a weekend, where we'll have huge gathering of people and preach the gospel. It's months of build up, trying to visit every school and put lots of 3,000 strong choirs together in the primary schools, visit hundreds of secondary schools, massive outpouring of social action, try and get every kid who's waiting for foster and adoption have the opportunity to be adopted into a Christian family, and so many things. We're really going for it like we've never gone before. I'm also extremely excited about something we're calling Advance, which 5 years ago, again, here's a classic, more than you could ask or imagine. 5 years ago, I gathered 12 young guys. I went away on a retreat, which is often when my best ideas come, I think. But I went away and I had the idea that maybe I should just gather some of our younger evangelists once a month to just pray together, sharpen each other, be super accountable, and challenge them to think about within 12 months gathering other evangelists around them. And I got one of the girls at the message. I kept it single sex. 2 groups started 5 years ago. I said, let's keep it single sex so it's very accountable in terms of lifestyles. Just let's be vulnerable and before the Lord. And so we ask each other all these questions about all that stuff. So I started the first advanced group anyway, 5 years ago, just over. And it's gone nuts. I mean, it couldn't make it up. There's over 60 nations now running advanced groups, well over 1,000 groups, multiple thousand evangelists. We believe by this time next year we'll be in 100 nations because we know where the next 30 nations are. We're translating these materials, which are equipping and multiplying evangelists as fast as we possibly can into anywhere we can find anybody who we believe will faithfully multiply these groups and share these materials. We'll fund them, we'll fund the translations, and it just feels like God really likes that. So his hand's massively on that. So there's a whole bunch of things, new things that I'm excited about as well.
And are you going to slow down at some stage?
You know, if you ask me what my big prayer request was, I ask people, I've done last week, I say that I can just get it right for the next 20 years, you know, I'll be 61 soon, or however long God gives me. What's the best I can bring to the message? Can't imagine slowing down. I can imagine perhaps flying at altitude a bit more and releasing some of these young guys who are doing so amazing and helping lead the message. But perhaps, you know, slow down time might be at the Lord's banquet. What do you reckon, Sam?
Yeah. I'm hoping to be all in until that time. Yeah,
That's
there's
it.
no such thing as coasting in self-indulgence from retirement to the grave. I mean, what a dull sort of reason to live. Well, thanks for modelling it. Listen, last few minutes, is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd really want to cover? And I'd like to ask you along the lines of, you know, what are your key sort of life mantras that you live by?
I think I've talked about all the stuff. It would just be great to let people know, you know, what the website, if you go to message.org.uk, or you can email Andy Hawthorne, andy.hawthorne@message.org.uk. If you wanted to partner with the message in any way, I really say, and I really mean it, that our first thought is partnership. We cannot get this job done on our own, but I believe God's given enough resources to his church to reach every man, woman and child. If we just work smart, if we just shifted our resources to where it really counts, we could preach the gospel to every person and we could see every need met in Jesus' name. That's the kind of resources that are in the church with God's power behind us. So, I want partnership to be the first thought. So if any church wants to partner, any individual, just let us know and we'd be blessed to have a go at that together. In terms of life messages, I think I'd say keep the main thing, and the main person and the main thing, the one it's all about is Jesus. Just keep Jesus front and center. He's amazing. You know, I still get confused with stuff in the Bible, 40 odd years after becoming a Christian. And some of it I'm more confused about than ever. But then I look at Jesus, focus my attention on Jesus, and it all makes sense. And he's amazing and captivating. And so my job really as founder of the message is to keep Jesus central. Keep him central to your life. Keep your walk with him fresh. Share the good news about his cross and resurrection. And God will look after the rest, I believe. Obviously, yes, I said keep prayer hot. Work on your devotional life. Make sure you've got good mates who are on the mission with you, who you can be vulnerable with. I told Simon I've got to go in 15 minutes. And the reason is we have this thing we call it, it's a joke actually, Friday fellowship at 5. But we have a bunch of lads at the message. We taste different beers every other Friday, and we have a laugh, and we have a competition making the best burgers we can, and just laugh together and have banter. And you need that stuff as well on the journey. Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, Andy, you provide me with some good laughs as well as challenge, inspiration. I'm sat here, and this is the ideal at the end of the podcast. We sat there with a great big satisfied smile of just, inspiration. I feel inspired, and so we'll call it a day there. I hope you've been inspired too. If you want to be in touch with me, you can do that at simongilbo.com or any of the social media platforms. I'd love it if you gave us a 5-star review on iTunes and spread the word. Next week we'll have someone else equally inspiring, different fields. Isn't it great? All the different fields, people's walks. Don't try to be anyone else. Just run the race that the Lord has marked out for you, but be all in. And thanks for modelling that to me and to many others, Andy. All the best, bro.
God bless. Cheers, Simon.
All right, guys. Toodaloo.